Cultural heritage is a bit more than mere bricks and mortar, and it's a bit more than just objects in museums or art galleries. It's about our way of life and how we live our life. So it encompasses everything from things we make to our music, to our traditions. And it's really about what it defines us as human beings.
There are certainly challenges about how we talk about heritage. We talk about it as heritage, and that's perhaps the first problem. Once we start talking about it as our own stories and our own places and our own pasts, the whole nature of the dialogue and discussion changes dramatically.
I think it's important to recognise that Scotland is as much its wider landscape as its cities, and there's a very kind of good dynamic balance between living an urban life but being able to drive or get a bus or a train within half an hour, be in quite significant geological landscape.
Once you start winding out a bit, it becomes a form of communal heritage, a form of communal identity, which then goes even further back towards national identity. So we see some very broad themes when thinking about heritage way beyond traditional ideas.
The type of work I make is often about taking large audiences into landscapes, often at night, illuminating them or changing them or transforming them through the act of moving through them. The point is to think of it as a cultural asset as well as purely a physical asset.
People look at the same thing in different ways, and that sometimes leads to conflict, it sometimes leads to misunderstanding. But I think that culture can be a way of helping bring peoples together, about understanding other people's, their viewpoint, understanding their way of life. So culture can be a real force for good.
Cultural heritage becomes problematic if it's misused by those in power in order to aggrandize a particular position, a particular ideology. Nationalists and right-wing people will misuse culture. They will claim particular identity, and they will claim language, and they will claim places as being symbolic of something that suits their ideology.
Heritage plays, I think, a critical role in urban regeneration, as it is the framework about which you can build the regeneration of a place. Now, the other essential ingredient are people. You can't regenerate a place without people, and some terrible examples from across the globe where millions are being pumped into cities and there's no people left.
I think there's also a tendency, certainly in Europe and North America, to focus too much on grand new architectural statements in new buildings. Sometimes that's important and appropriate, but in other cases we may be far better off looking at restoring and making use of older buildings.
So when you're regenerating a place, first of all, think of it as a grassroots activity. So you're supporting the regeneration. You're supporting the residents in how they regenerate their city. You're supporting them in how they look after their houses and their heritage, and how you strengthen their identities. And in doing so, you're strengthening society.
This is clearly important for Scotland over the next 3, 4, 5 years, because it is our identity, not our economic strength, that is going to be our survival point in Europe.
The key thing is to recognise how important culture is to a vibrant society, wherever that society might be in the world.
That's what art is good at, and that's where the cultural aspect of this is really important, is building empathy between humans who are born into very, very different situations, whether that's through class, background, religion. It doesn't matter what the divides are. You have to have ways to unify around the human experience.
It's a great opportunity to talk with, to engage with, to debate and discuss with people, practitioners in countries across the world. And I think through that discussion, new ways of looking at the future can come forward.
I hope that they'll take away some ideas about participation, some ideas about how we move away from heritage and architectural values being the definers of heritage, and into this wider idea of heritage as the lens through which we look at a city and the enabler of people to get those outstanding social, economic and environmental outcomes.